Gail Cruikshank, Talent Director, Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, stops by for our Get a Job segment. Gail, good to see you.
Good morning.
So today we're talking about resume and job application tips. And this is kind of a refresher. I know we've done this before, but it's been a little while.
It has.
And times change. And what would be recommended probably changes a little bit too. First of all, with resume, where do you start? And sometimes that can be daunting, especially if you haven't updated it for a while.
It can be. And one of the things that I recommend to everyone, no matter if you're happily employed, you should always have a current resume, even if it's just sharing with someone what you're doing. And so it should always be a working document. But again, I think the biggest message that I always share with any job seeker is make sure that you are fine-tuning that resume for the job specifically that you're applying to. There is no more of just, I have a standard resume, I mail it out to 25 companies and hope to get a job. It really needs to be specific. So you still can build that resume framework, which that would be simply just going through and assessing, obviously what's your work history, but what are your strengths? You and I talk about transferable skills a lot on air, having that basic framework, and then you just simply tweak it and edit it based on what company you're applying to.
Okay, so make sure your resume is aimed toward whatever that job is. That
Absolutely, because again, you need to, look at what they're looking for and then bleed that into your resume as far as your examples and, what your skills are, because each company looks for different things. They don't all have that standard of you need to have all of these 6 things or 10 things. They're each looking for something different, and you need to stand out as being that one that has most of those or is the most interesting, alignment to that culture fit they're looking for.
Sure. So if you look at what the preferred prerequisites are for each one of these jobs, do you try to cater your resume to reflect that, especially the ones that you might already have?
Absolutely. And that's what we strongly recommend. So reading through that job description and calling those specific traits out that you have or experiences that you have, or looking, doing your homework on that company, what's their culture like? What are some passions that maybe you share that the company shares? Maybe you have a passion to volunteer at whatever organization, and that's something that they strongly, support as well. Calling those things out, it just, again, gets their attention, because keep in mind, they're going to look at the top, maybe a third to a half of your first page. And if you don't get their attention, they might not go any further. So again, making that statement or that, something that's going to get their attention to want to read all your information.
A lot of times your education is on top. Should you not have that on top?
I would not put education on your top. I would put job experience on your top,
Okay.
And I also say don't waste space with an objective unless it's very specific to that company, again, that's going to get their attention. Many people that have been in the workforce a while are kind of using that intro as a summary statement, again, using keywords that match into that company they're applying to before they go into their work experience. And then education comes later, as well as volunteerism and things like that. Certainly, if you've been out of the workforce, if you've been in the workforce for quite a while, education does not become as important as certainly if you're a recent graduate, perhaps, and have maybe limited experience.
Right. So your experience should be on top, especially if that's your calling card.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would you put next? I mean, do you include that summary that you were talking about, or should that not be included? Your objective.
Well, I always say if you're going to use it as a summary type statement, and that would go at the very top, and then your experience, and then you get into education, community involvement. I mean, those things are all really important too. And I always tell people, even if you've been working for 20 years, your resume should be no longer than 2 pages. I've seen resumes that are 4 to 6 pages, and you're not going to capture that. If you have more information to share, that's what you share during the interview, or, put a few snippets of that in your cover letter, those kind of things. But don't submit a 6-page resume.
Yeah, right. Less is more in some cases.
It is. Right. It is. And that's a key, to be very concise. You don't need paragraphs. Bullet points are actually preferred. As somebody that did recruiting for many, many years, you want to be able to just pick and grab what stands out to you. And bullets are easier than sentences. And
be accurate.
Yes.
Kind of goes without saying, but don't stretch the truth on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be sharing what you're doing. We as, Minnesotans don't want to share our, we've done this or we've succeeded at this. You want to highlight those, but don't stretch the truth, and certainly don't be dishonest with it, because it will come out. If they find out you have been dishonest, you've pretty much, written yourself off there as an option.
Yeah, true. Being professional. Grammar should be good. Email address should be included in this.
Exactly. And I always tell people, have a friend or a coworker or, relative read it for you. If you're crafting it, sometimes you're not seeing some of those things because you've been looking at it for several minutes or several weeks or whatever it might be. So practice you're interviewing with somebody, and also have somebody else review your resume, just to have a fresh look and a fresh perspective.
What are some of the other considerations you should have on your resume?
I did, I've mentioned community engagement. If you're parts of organizations, that speaks loudly. If you love to volunteer, anything like that is great to include, because, again, it shows you're involved in the community. You're invested in the community, which is certainly something that we're looking for, any company is looking for in an individual. They want to see where that person could continue to grow, just as much as a candidate wants to see their opportunity to grow. Like, if I go into job A, how can I get to job F, right? Well, employers want to be able to see, okay, if I hire this person for this, I see them as maybe moving towards this, and having that progression, because we all want to have that retention of talent, but we have to give them reasons to want to stay and opportunities to stay.
So if you're fortunate enough that your resume passed the test and they're reaching out to you for an interview, concerned with as far as doing your homework for an interview?
What I really stress with people is take a look at their website, look at their social media, follow them, on some avenues, so you really get a chance to know what they're all about. If you know anyone that works within that organization or have a connection to someone that does, find out what you can, make those connections, because it always is better if you can reference that you either know someone there, or at least the inside track of what's it like to work there, because it's not just about the job itself. Those job seekers are looking for that right culture, that right fit, and so are the employers. So, they want it to be a good match. And so if you do have some connection, just reach out to them and say, hey, what's it like to work here? And you're going to get honest feedback, and it's going to help determine, is it a right fit for you or not?
Right. So you can be picky.
You can be. It is still a job seeker's market. However, you still have to do your homework and be prepared to be able to obtain that job and be that candidate of choice for that employer.
And you should practice your interview?
Yeah, I always say, either practice with a friend, family member, or just simply a mirror, because you should see how you are coming across. And I always tell people, even if your first interview is a virtual interview, make sure you're still smiling on the other end, and you can feel it in the interview through the phone if somebody's engaged, if they're attentive, if they're smiling, that sort of thing. And always, always, always dress to impress at an interview. Again, even if it's a virtual Zoom interview, at least from to the waist should look professional,
right?
Because you never want to lose that chance for that first impression. Nobody will ever disqualify a candidate for being overly dressed or, too professional. If you find out it's a different type of work environment, then a second or third interview, you can adapt, and they'll share that with you as an employer.
So you shouldn't necessarily go and try to find that out ahead of time as far as what the expected dress should be?
I would not, unless the company might specifically say, well, just so you know, Friday is casual day, so, feel free to wear, if an employer shares some detail, then certainly, adapt to that. But otherwise, go in with, I'm going to impress them with both my personality, my presence, as well as my work history.
Could that be the type of thing that could be a tie break if there's you and somebody else for a job? If you look like you're more professional, that you might get the nod?
Absolutely, it will. And again, think about if you are going into the company to interview, there's a lot of other people looking at you too, right? So it might be, and a lot of interviewers and companies will go around and say, hey, what did you think of so-and-so? What was, I know you had a chance to chat with him or her for a few minutes while they were waiting for me. They get feedback from their coworkers. So again, you're not just impressing the interviewer, you're also impressing the company. Could be anything from the parking attendant to the CEO, depending on, who you might have interaction with.
Right. If people do want to find out more, maybe some helpful hints, can they go to your website to do that?
Absolutely, they can, Jay. And, for job seekers, go to stcloudshines.com, and you will see all of the jobs that are available within the region, as well as a variety of tips. I mean, there's one document that has about 70 interview questions on. So again, it kind of helps you. Maybe I didn't think of they might ask me that. So the more you're prepared, again, your answers are going to be more effective and more spot on. If you're an employer and want to get more tips, more advice, go to our GSDC website at greaterstcloud.com. And we've got lots of resources for our employers that will help you during both recruitment as well as the retention of talent.
Excellent. Gail, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Gail Cruikshank, Talent Director, Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation. This has been our Get a Job segment here on WJON.